Today on Coffee Roasting Legends, San Franciscan roasters Bill Kennedy speaks with Sarah Witter from Fetch Coffee.
Welcome, Sarah. This is Sarah Witter from Fetch Coffee. And I want to say thank you for being here with us. And,
Thanks for having me.
well, it's so fun talking to different people who have, kind of started their own journey into the coffee world. And, they're making a splash in their own little realm. And I kind of want to start off basically, Sarah, is just like, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and um kind of and we're going to get in a little bit more in depth into your story and how you arrived, you know, everything from that beautiful roaster that's behind you and everything else like that. But go ahead, I'll let you start.
Okay. Well, I didn't start out in coffee at all. I was a big coffee enthusiast, but my only real experience with it was in college, and I was painfully shy and signed up for a coffee enthusiast like night class, mostly just to meet other people because I had such a hard time even, saying hello. It turned out I was the youngest person by several decades in the class, so it was fun and I learned a lot. But ironically, that roaster that ran the class at the time said that roasting was smelled terrible and was highly toxic, and it was the worst part about coffee. So I think that stopped me actually from. I mean, I just assumed it was true. I think it stopped me from really thinking about coffee as a career for a long time. So I went on to do work in not-for-profits. I've got a master's degree in arts administration, so an MBA combined with not-for-profit management. Worked for a number of really wonderful organizations, and then ended up going out on my own, and became a branding specialist. I used my marketing knowledge and my farther background in art and design, and I did that for a number of years, and then ended up taking on a full-time job with one of my clients, who happened to be an ERP consultant, so all the computer programs that run manufacturing. And that job brought me to a very large roastery. Um, just I got to go on site with them when they were hired on, and I was obsessed with the roasting floor. Could not get every time we had to go on a tour. I was just so excited, and I just soaked it all in. And my first thought was, "It smells great." I don't know what that other person was talking about.
But
No,
I
every
was gonna say, I was gonna just interject. It's like, well, in the world of coffee, there's an awful lot of subjectivity too, and everybody's experience is just going to be a little bit different.
yes,
It sounds to me that there was a time when people were talking about acrylamide and things like that, the different off gases that came off with coffee. And, how bad that is, I don't know, but it's been forgotten since that point, and people really aren't talking about it. So, like anything in an industry, there are little whims and fads and concerns and this and that kind of come and go. But there are other things that really. Let's just say if that experience was the same across the board that that person had, none of us would be in coffee, right?
yeah. I agree. In
Anyways,
fact, I think honestly, I always say I have the best smelling job in the world, you know? So I'll take that perspective instead. Um, yeah. So I really wanted to make a career change. I wasn't happy sitting behind a computer all day long. Um, I wanted to do something. I really was completely lost. And meanwhile, I'm talking about every time I got to go onto the roasting floor, that's all I talked about at home. And one day my husband said, "Oh, Sarah, there's these classes you can take with specialty coffee to learn how to roast." And I'm like, "Todd, I don't have time to do that. I'm trying to figure out what I wanna do with my career." And he just stared at me and he's like, "What do you think I'm suggesting?" It had never occurred to me that that could be a direction, and as soon as he said that, everything clicked. Um, Within weeks, I had signed up for a class, at Boot Coffee in California, to learn how to roast, and, I thought, "Well, that's gonna make or break it," and I left, I couldn't wait to get started. Um so that's sort of the quick version of me. Um, Combining that, I also have a background in animal behavior. I was, lucky enough to work as sort of an intern, and assistant with Trisha McConnell, who is, a groundbreaking animal behaviorist back I mean, she still is, but, this was, back in the early '90s, and, I really have a passion for that, have a passion for, animal welfare, but also with science behind it, not just, "Oh, aren't they cute?" and, emotional,
Mhm.
but really with the facts combined into that, and what we need to do as people to be more kind, to everything around us, not just people.
Well,
Um,
there are a lot of coffee roasters that incorporate, um, let's say, a third entity as part of their mission and
yes,
what they're doing, and so hence the name of your roastery, Fetch Coffee.
yes,
And talk a little bit more like that about those things, how you came up with the name.
sure.
Finding a name for your roastery is always a huge battle, right?
It is,
And why don't you talk a little bit
it
about
is.
that and
Yeah,
how
well,
you landed on Fetch?
because of the background and, when I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, um I really thought if I could do anything without making money, what would I do? If that wasn't a factor, and it would be working with animal charities and it would be roasting coffee. So I thought, well, what if one supported the other and then I get to do both? So that's really where it came from. And so I wanted to have a dog or an animal centric name without it being too flowery or too long.
Mhm.
I didn't want it to, I felt like a big part of the reason I love coffee is the joy it brings. I feel like coffee always, you don't drink coffee to feel bad.
Right.
There's so much positivity centered around all parts of coffee, that I really wanted it to embold that. I wanted the name to be sort of zippy and energetic and something that was associated with something that makes people smile, that just and so obviously I'm on the internet trying to like see what other names have been taken already and everything. And
Right, right.
ironically, the first name I wanted was taken by a company that wasn't coffee. Um, or was it coffee? Anyway, oh, it was coffee, but it wasn't dog related, ironically. And so just Fetch came out of the blue, and I couldn't believe that it was not taken. There had been one other company that had used the name, but they seemed to have sort of vanished years ago. So I just liked it. It's one syllable. It's quick and easy. You think about a lot of energy and happiness when you hear that.
Sure.
So that's really where it came from. Um, that being said, one of the biggest challenges that I felt is I don't wanna be seen as a charity company. Um, I wanna be seen as a specialty coffee company where the coffee quality is always at the very top. But at the same time, it's sort of balancing that line in the branding, right? Is how can you talk about the thing that you're supporting at all times, at the same time you're trying to make sure that the coffee is not ever put second. So that was my biggest fear about the name, but that's where we talk about it so we've got the name that captures all that. And then and honestly, a lot of people interpret the name differently, go fetch a cup of coffee, things like that. That's so fetch. We hear all those things all the time when people come into our shop. So I do feel like even though we started with the animal focus, it doesn't necessarily get interpreted that way by everybody, which I love.
Mhm. The semantics that go behind picking a name. I think you covered that really well. There are a lot of emotions and feelings that go into a word, and finding a word that has a real, well, like you said, like a plethora of emotions and associations and generally positive feelings that go into it that are not necessarily coffee related, but
Mhm.
they are human experience related and they're positive. And like you said, they're zippy. And I think it's worthwhile, just on a side note, to spend time on a name like you did, that it speaks to at so many different levels, to you know, the the animal loving community. But when you said that's so fetch, I thought, oh, hey, look, you've arrived if your coffee house has become, um, an adjective, right? A a descriptor. So,
Yeah. Well, and that's, in all fairness, that is from a movie, that term.
oh,
Um,
really?
yeah,
See,
yeah.
okay, yeah,
Um, but that again, though, it relates it right to something else
sure.
besides just what our initial goal was, and that is really fun.
Well, let's talk, though. Okay, you had this concept and you wanted to do a coffee house roastery. Um, Tell us about how that proceeded, your physical location, some of the challenges you ran into, and then how you came about, picking out what sorts of equipment that you're going to use. Obviously, you have a beautiful roaster, but like what type of espresso machine and brewer and those types of things. What was your thought process in choosing those items?
Sure. Well, initially, I actually didn't have the coffee shop. I co-roasted on a very old Probot with very few options, but I still loved it. I was so excited just to be roasting. And honestly, at the time, I was lucky because I started the company in late 2019.
Mhm.
And so because I didn't have a coffee shop, I didn't have employees, I didn't have equipment, I was very lucky going into COVID. I was able to, I didn't have any overhead to worry about. I was roasting on demand. And I was able to sell, I sort of built the business on, a lot of free delivery and pieces like that. But it gave me time to really think about what I did want, when the opportunity arose. And honestly, a coffee shop wasn't necessarily in the plans. I definitely wanted my own roastery, but
Mhm.
this particular place came up available and kept calling to me. So I decided that was my uh, excuse to get the roaster, for lack of
Okay.
a better word. I really wanted a San Franciscan roaster. Um, and so, that's really what I was able to justify doing all that if I could also have a coffee shop to really help build the business, have a brick and mortar, with the really wonderful and unexpected, for me, side effect of building a better community. We've really been fortunate, and I've gotten to know so many wonderful people, and I was not thinking about that side of it when I started. It was really just about me roasting coffee, that I was sort of focused on. So when we did get the coffee shop, every single piece, I was trying to be as thoughtful as I could about what I was getting, why I was getting it, the company culture, even with the company, with the pieces that I was purchasing, trying to make everything positive. Kind of going on that same theme of coffee makes you feel good. Everything around it should be also positive. When I was learning to roast, the facility, the campus that I went to had a number of different roasters. And as soon as I roasted it, it only had a 1 pound San Franciscan, but I roasted on a couple other brands. And as soon as I was on that one, that was the end of it. I loved it. I didn't want to roast on anything else the entire week. That's all I roasted on. And I just knew that I like the way it feels. I like the mechanics. I like the control it has. Everything about it just spoke to me. And I have never regretted that decision. So that was my very first purchase. Everything was built around getting the roaster first. And then after that, the espresso machines, that was one of our biggest challenges. Also, I will say this was early 2021 when supply chain was absolutely insane. So some of my equipment purchases were what can I get, not what do I want. But I did get a Synesso. I like the idea that it was kind of keeping everything on the West Coast. I got the roaster and from Nevada, and I'm getting that from Washington. And I like the idea that it's close, that if questions or if there's something went wrong, at worst, we could drive it up to, to Washington. I know
Right.
it's really how it works, but um, and so that was the other, big decision around that. Um, but what other kinds of equipment questions would you have? I mean,
But so you have a retail location there, and typically the roaster, the espresso machine, the brewer, and maybe the grinder. Those are like four key areas and that you
yeah,
picked from. And yeah, so we got the San Franciscan roaster, coffee roasting equipment,
yeah,
and then we've got Synesso for your espresso equipment. What did you
yes.
choose for a brewer, or do you even
Um,
have a brewer?
yeah,
And grinder, yeah.
Yeah, we have a brewer. We went with Curtis. I had again, actually, it was a lot of it was the equipment that I'd had positive experiences with when I was training. They had a Curtis brewer, and it's funny because looking back, it was also the first time I'd had really, really good coffee, but it was also on the Curtis brewer. So, not it's probably both, but it's been fantastic. It works like a charm. My biggest regret was not getting a double. We got a single. So we spent a
Okay,
lot
yeah.
of time frantically brewing coffee when we run out of it all at the same time. But it's been, knock on wood, we haven't had a single issue with it at all. It's been running, nonstop for 3.5 years. And then the grinders, um, I was not able to get the grinders I wanted when we opened, and I have since replaced them with Melconic. Um, and I've got a grind by weight for our regular espresso, and then we just purchased, it's one of their groups, I can't think of the name now, that we got for our decaf espresso grinder, but it's Malconic family.
Yeah.
Um, and I really like them. I like, again, it kind of goes back to the same reason I like the San Franciscan. Is it feels a little more mechanical than it does just computerized where you're pushing buttons and not really, I like that I can take the thing apart and I can understand how it works, and I can troubleshoot, that kind of thing. So very happy with that, with the grinders as well.
So, getting back to, part of the community that you've established there, you have a program called the Friends of Fetch.
Yes.
What does that do?
So we donate to dogs in need. What we do is we look for organizations that are very responsible with their finances, and keeping the correct focus on the animals. I wanted to be very transparent. There's other companies out there that will, do similar things to us, which is great. And I love there should be more. One is not one, two, three is not enough. Um, but I wanted to be very transparent about what we donate, because a lot of them will say, 10% or 20% of our proceeds or our profits, and I feel that that can be manipulated in so many different ways. To look good and maybe not really make as much of an impact. So I did a straight out dollar amount. It's $1 for every bag we sell gets donated. It doesn't matter if it's, through our wholesale program or, through the cafe. It's just absolutely standard. And that way it's clean, to the point. Um, People know that, every time they buy coffee, they're helping dogs in need. It's a great way to give back without really having to go out of your way. Coffee is something you drink anyway. It's just a great way to just know that what you're doing is doing something good. So I always support Soy Dog Foundation in Thailand. And that might seem a little strange since it's not here. But I have been so impressed with what they have done as an organization, not just locally, but well, I mean, you could say globally in many ways, but especially specifically for Thailand. Soy Dog Foundation helped. changed the law in Thailand to make dog food or dog meat, the dog meat trade, um,
Mhm.
illegal. And they're not just attacking things from one direction or another. They're really taking the big picture. So
Mhm.
they are educating school children on kindness toward animals and um, you know, humane treatment. They have a huge rescue program that they are constantly taking in horrible abuse cases, as well as finding strays, animals that have been hit by cars, you name it, and rescuing them, rehabilitating them. And then if the dogs are well enough, they can go back where they originally were. If they're not, they stay at the shelter. And the shelter is not just a bunch of kennels. They live in little pods of dogs where they're outside and they can run around, and they have a plethora of volunteers. In addition, they've got a huge spay and neuter program. They are spaying and neutering thousands and thousands of dogs and cats every single month now. It's really huge. Yeah, and that is the biggest problem. They've got such an overpopulation. So they are really attacking the problem from so many different directions. And they are, as people, just so incredibly kind. So they were a big inspiration to me when I started the company. So I feel that I want to always support them, which is really fun. We've been able to do some fun little partnerships together. And then I rotate the second. We always support two organizations at once. So the second one is usually almost always a local or regional organization, usually smaller, where we really feel like we can help make a difference. So we've supported a number of different organizations in town, from helping one that's called the Pongo Fund. It helps a lot of people who are houseless make sure that their animals are fed, because a lot of times those people will feed their animals before themselves. So it helps both communities that way, or both populations. Um, One that helps lower income people get urgent health care for their animals. And then a lot of rescues. Right now, we're working with Oregon Dog Rescue, which is really near and dear to my heart. It's a really great organization. Again, started really small, and they've just done all the right things, and they've just been able to expand it to bring in a lot more animals, and they do a lot of work with them so that they're not stressed while they're at the shelter, which is a big problem for dogs when they get adopted. People don't always truly get to see the personality of the dogs. More and more shelters are doing that, but really trying to make sure the shelter environment is less stressful. So there's a few organizations.
Yeah, the altruistic nature of just the specialty coffee industry. I mean, so many people have so many ways to give back to wherever,
Yeah.
to make this planet a better place. And that's what I really love about it. Okay, so here you are. What are your goals, your plans for the future? Where do you, just like an interview question, right? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Yeah. What do you want to be? Where do you want to be?
Well, I am just chomping at the bit to grow. Um, our coffee shop, we've been really fortunate. It's really successful. The wholesale is building slowly but surely. I am a little stuck right now in terms of which direction. We're kind of we want to grow the online part, where it's the bags, or to open a couple more coffee shops. That's the big question at the moment. But I'm been crunching all the numbers and checking into all the options, and hoping to really land on a decision in the next even month or two. Um,
The,
it's
the
I just want to
question
roast
of
more coffee.
scaling.
Sorry.
I said the question of scaling.
Yes, the question of scaling, it's a big one. And without that crystal ball that we could all use, it's always a hard one to know. But I'm kind of coming at it from the perspective of, I want to spend more time with my roaster. Um, that's really my goal. So however I can roast more coffee is really what I want to do. So we shall see.
Well, they're difficult challenges. They're hard, but it's always good to do the hard thing and to put yourself through the hard process. Uh,
Yes.
it's like making a diamond, right? Uh,
Yes.
when you go through the pressure, the hard process, that's when you come out with the diamond. Well,
Yeah. Well, it's certainly been a process.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us and sharing your story. Hope lots and lots of people get to see it. If they want to order coffee from you guys, what's your website? What's the best place to to do that?
So fetchroasters.com is our website.
Roasters plural, Fetch
Yes,
Roasters. Okay.
Fetch Roasters. That's correct. Yep.
All right. So go to
We're the
fetchroasters.com
Yep.
and there's some expertly roasted coffee on a San Franciscan roaster.
Yes.
And also support our friendly canine community.
Yes. Yep. We're always happy when we can write those bigger checks for them. So, and thank
Absolutely.
you for building such a fantastic roaster. I feel lucky every day I roast on it. So,
Well, good. Thank you for the kind words. We really, really love doing what we're doing here in Carson City and building these roasters and uh, getting to. It's really a privilege to hear all these stories. It's one of the reasons why we wanted to start this thing because all the stories are so fun to hear, and it's uh, well, hopefully be a little bit of motivation for someone to like, do like you did and said it's time for a change.
yeah, I'll tell you, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't ever regret making this change. Working in coffee is just such a privilege. It really is. I
It
feel
really is. I agree. Okay, Sarah, well, thank you again.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
we wish you the best.
Yep, same to you. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, we'll wrap it up here and we'll send you the well, we'll post a link. Is it okay with you if we take excerpts out and as a quote for our own marketing publication kind of stuff and
Absolutely, yeah. I
yeah.
hope I said enough good things for you.
Oh,
I
you
can't
did.
be more genuine when I say I love that roaster. I just, um,
See, that was a great little clip. I can't be more genuine. I just love this roaster.
it's
See?
true.
Well, you're a marketing person, so you know all this stuff.
It's funny though, it's so hard when it's your own stuff. It's so hard. It's so much easier to promote someone else's things.
Yeah, I know. I think it's probably that self-criticism uh, that lives with us, right?
I think so. Yep, between that and feeling like maybe more rides on it because you don't have someone else to bounce it off of as much. But either way, yeah, anyway, thank you for everything that you do. I've just yeah, it's great.
Well, great setting, and yeah, hope to come up and visit you guys one day.
Oh, that would be great. You're
So,
welcome anytime.
well, thank you. All right, Sarah. Well, thank you.
Hey, thank you. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.